The arrival. The stars above Earth were calm, silent, and peaceful. But deep in the blackness of space, something was coming. Something huge. A fleet of alien ships entered the solar system. They were cold, dark, and shaped like massive blades. At the center of the fleet was the command ship of the Xeranti Empire, a species feared across galaxies. No one had ever stopped them. Every planet they visited either bowed or burned. Inside the command ship, High General Vorak stood with his arms behind his back. His skin was gray, his eyes sharp like knives. He looked at the screen in front of him. Target planet. Earth, the computer said. Vorak gave a small smile. They will kneel, he whispered. On Earth, the skies were clear, but something strange was happening. Military bases all around the world had picked up strange signals. Governments were confused. The world had seen peace for years, but now, warning lights flashed on every radar screen. Far below the surface, inside a hidden military bunker, Commander Reyna Hale watched the same signals. She sat in a dark room surrounded by screens. Her face was calm. Cold, almost. She had seen things most people could never imagine. An officer ran in. "Ma'am, alien ships just passed Neptune. They're moving fast." Reyna nodded slowly. Time. Less than 2 hours before they reach Earth orbit. Reyna turned to her team. "Prepare silent protocol. No global alert." The officer looked confused. "No alert. The people. They'll know when they need to," she said firmly. The alien fleet stopped just outside Earth's orbit. One of their smaller ships moved forward and sent a signal. All screens on Earth, TVs, computers, phones, suddenly turned black. Then, a strange symbol appeared, followed by a deep, terrifying voice. "This is the Xeranti Empire. You have one choice. Submit to our rule or face destruction. You have 10 Earth minutes to decide." The message repeated in every language. Panic started across the planet. People screamed. Some cried. Others tried to pray. But in the bunker, Reyna didn't move. A younger officer looked at her. "What do we do, Commander?" Reyna stared at the countdown on the screen. "We wait." On the Xeranti ship, General Vorak watched the humans through their satellites. He expected begging, screaming, panic. But instead, something strange happened. Earth went silent. There were no surrender signals, no warnings, no global messages of fear. "Why aren't they responding?" one alien officer asked. Vorak frowned. "Strange. Are they preparing to fight?" "They don't have the power to stop us," another officer said. Vorak didn't answer. Something felt off. Then suddenly, one of their scout ships disappeared. No warning, no explosion, just gone. Vorak's eyes narrowed. "Where is Scout 47? No one could answer. Moments later, another ship lost connection. Then another. Inside the human bunker, Reyna finally spoke. "Begin Phase 1. Her officer pressed a button, and dozens of hidden human ships began to rise from under oceans, deserts, and mountains. They didn't look fancy. They weren't shiny or smooth like the alien ships. But they were powerful, built in secret, made for one purpose: survival. Back on the Xeranti ship, warnings blared. Multiple human vessels, rising from the planet. Impossible. Their tech level. "We underestimated them," Vorak growled. "This isn't the Earth from our records." He looked at the human faces on his screen. Some looked calm. Others were even smiling. "They're not afraid," he whispered. He clenched his fists. They should be afraid. But the humans weren't. They had faced war before. They had seen death. They had lost millions and still stood strong. Now, when faced with an enemy bigger than anything they had ever seen, they didn't flinch. They didn't shake. They didn't run. They prepared. And for the first time in decades, the mighty Xeranti Empire felt something cold creep into their hearts. Was it confusion? No, it was fear. The first strike. Above Earth, the Exeranti fleet floated like giant knives in the dark. Their sleek black ships reflected no light. From afar, they looked like shadows that didn't belong to anything real. But now, those shadows were being cut by something unexpected. One of the Exeranti battleships exploded in silence. No warning, no visible fire, just a bright flash. And then it was gone. General Vorek's jaw tightened. "What just happened?" he demanded. "Unknown, General. There was no energy pulse, no missile trace, no launch signature." Then how did the ship vanish? The officers had no answer. The screen showed more flashes. Another ship disappeared. And then another. Within seconds, 3 ships from the outer fleet were lost. Deep under the Atlantic Ocean, the Phantom-class human stealth cruiser slid back into hiding. Not even Earth's best satellites could see it, and the aliens had no idea it existed. Inside, Captain Elias Kale smiled as he watched the damage reports. "Targets destroyed. No counterattack. They still don't know we're here," his officer said. Elias leaned back in his chair. "They think we're primitive," he said. "Let's give them a surprise they'll never forget." In the Exeranti command ship, alarms were everywhere now. "This is impossible," a senior tech said. "Humans shouldn't have this capability." Vorek slammed a fist onto the console. "Then how are they doing it?" One of his generals stepped forward. "Perhaps we missed something in their history. Maybe they've hidden their real power." Vorek's eyes burned with anger. No species hides this well. But in the back of his mind, a seed of doubt began to grow. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Reyna Hale stood watching from her screen as human stealth cruisers launched coordinated attacks on the enemy's outer fleet. She turned to her team. "Initiate Ghost Protocol." No radio, no heat, no signature. Officers nodded and moved quickly. Earth wasn't just responding. It had been planning. For decades, since first contact rumors, since strange signals from deep space, they had prepared. But not openly. Silently. Patiently. Humanity had hidden its best weapons, not because it was weak, but because it wanted others to believe it was. And now the trap was closing. Above the Earth, Exeranti fighters were launched in all directions to find the attackers. But their sensors picked up nothing. Just cold space and empty silence. Suddenly, they saw something. A strange object floating near their ship. Small, metallic, no engine. It looked like a satellite. Just a harmless satellite. Then it blinked. A soft blue light. Before anyone could react, the satellite exploded with a silent burst of electromagnetic energy. The entire battleship's systems went dark. They had no shields, no power, no navigation. The humans hadn't just attacked their ships. They had attacked their nerves. Back on Earth, in a dimly lit war room, the highest leaders of the world stood around Reyna. Generals, scientists, politicians, but no one spoke over her. Reyna pointed to a star map. "We have 3 more targets. After that, they'll be forced to regroup." One general raised a brow. "You really think they'll run?" Reyna smiled slightly. "No, but they'll hesitate. That's when we strike hardest." Another officer asked, "Do we reveal Project Revenant?" Reyna shook her head. "Not yet. Let them wonder how we're doing this. Let the fear grow." In the silence of space, the Exeranti fleet was shrinking fast. They had lost 7 ships now. And they still had no idea how. Vorek stood at the window, breathing slowly, trying to calm himself. "These humans, they're not just fighting. They're hunting us." One of his officers whispered, "They don't fight like any species we've seen." Vorek turned sharply, "Because they're not just fighting to win. They're fighting to prove something." He looked again at the blue planet below. "Humans want us to be afraid." The officer's voice was low. And it's working, sir. Inside the Phantom-class cruiser, Captain Elias Kale gave new orders. Prep the fusion knives. Time for a little show. His ship moved slowly behind another Xeranti destroyer. From the outside, it looked like nothing was there. Then, with no warning, two glowing blue blades sliced across the destroyer's engines. No explosions, just silence. Then the ship drifted, dead. The unseen war. From high orbit, the Earth looked calm. Blue oceans, white clouds, green land. But above the clouds, in the darkness of space, chaos had begun. The Xeranti had arrived expecting surrender. Instead, they were being hunted by ghosts. Inside the Xeranti flagship, General Vorak stood in silence, staring at the empty space outside his window. The fear in the room was growing. No one wanted to say it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. They were losing. We cannot detect them. We cannot predict them. This is not war. It's slaughter, one officer muttered. Vorak clenched his jaw. We have technology superior to 10,000 species. These, humans, are nothing. But the tremble in his voice betrayed him. Far below, deep inside a mountain base known only to a few, Commander Raina Hale walked into a secured chamber. In the center stood a tall pod covered with steel locks and humming energy shields. Two guards stepped aside. Inside the pod floated something. Alive. A human. Barely moving. Eyes closed. Wires connected to every part of his body. Raina stared at the figure. Wake him. A technician swallowed hard. Are you sure, Commander? He hasn't been. Do it. The room dimmed as the system hummed. Lights blinked red. Slowly, the human inside the pod opened his eyes. They glowed faint silver. Not natural. Not normal. But very human. His name was Merrick. And he wasn't just any soldier. He was part of Project Revenant, a secret experiment to create battlefield ghosts. Humans who could think faster than machines, blend into the environment, and destroy without leaving a trace. At the same time, above Earth, the remaining Xeranti ships tried to pull back into formation, but it was useless. Their radars were jammed. Their signals were silent. Their commanders were confused. Ships vanished one after another, without explosions, without warnings. Just gone. It's like they control the shadows, an officer whispered. Back on Earth, in a dark corridor of a hidden bunker, Merrick walked for the first time in years. Soldiers moved out of his way without being told. Some looked at him with fear, others with awe. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Raina walked beside him. We only deploy you if we have no other choice. Merrick nodded. Then it must be bad. Raina paused. They underestimated us. Merrick gave a faint smile. Good. High above, General Vorak was now desperate. His ships were dying. His people were panicking. He looked at a screen showing Earth's last known military strength. According to their own records, humans had basic technology. Barely spacefaring, weak energy shields, no advanced fleet. But that data was wrong. All of it. Have we been tricked? Vorak asked. No, another officer replied, pale. We've been studied. For years. The truth crashed down on them. The humans hadn't just prepared for war. They had prepared for this war. Specifically, Merrick launched from the mountain base silently. His drop pod left no heat trail, no signal. He fell like a meteor. But he didn't burn. He landed on one of the last Xeranti destroyers, completely invisible to their sensors. The hull of the ship shimmered beneath his feet. He touched it lightly, and within seconds, he was inside, passing through the walls like a ghost, slipping past cameras, entering restricted zones. Alarms didn't go off. The crew didn't see him, but they felt something. A coldness, like being watched. Then the lights flickered, and the screaming began. Outside, Raina watched the mission feed through a live neural link. Merrick's mind was faster than machines. He moved between soldiers like water, disabling systems, planting silent charges. She whispered to herself, "They'll never understand what hit them." Back in space, the destroyer went dark, then bloomed silently into fragments. It had taken Merrick less than 5 minutes. General Vorek's heart sank. They had only 40% of their fleet left. And now something worse had happened. "They're inside our ships," an officer cried. "It's not just weapons. They've infiltrated us physically." "Impossible," Vorek shouted. But deep down, he knew it was true. That night, Earth slept in silence. But the stars above it told a different story. The invaders had come with arrogance. They had expected to scare the humans. Instead, they were vanishing, one by one, without even knowing who or what was destroying them. No one had declared war. No one had shouted a battle cry. Just this quiet, terrifying message: "We are here, and we are not afraid." The echoes of fear. The galaxy had gone silent. No distress calls, no warnings, just fear. The Exeranti Empire, once proud and undefeated, had been shaken by a force they couldn't even see. Ships that disappeared, fleets that never returned, and worst of all, the silence that followed. In the command center of the last functioning Exeranti dreadnought, General Vorek sat alone. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Every screen in front of him showed static. Every attempt to contact his remaining fleet returned only echoes. It was as if the humans had erased them from existence. "This is no longer a war," he whispered. "It's a nightmare." Back on Earth, inside a black site known as Outpost Dusk, Commander Raina Hale reviewed footage captured from Merrick's last mission. There was no sound, just quick flashes, dark hallways, frightened aliens, and one human figure moving through it all, calm, cold, and precise. Merrick wasn't just killing them. He was studying them. "Project Revenant has gone beyond expectations," said a voice behind her. It belonged to Dr. Lorne, the lead scientist behind Merrick's design. Raina didn't look away from the screen. "He's too quiet." Lorne shrugged. "You wanted someone who never flinched, someone who doesn't feel fear." Raina frowned. "What if he's forgotten how to feel anything?" Meanwhile, deep inside the destroyed remains of a Exeranti cruiser, strange sounds echoed through the halls. Not human, not machine. Just whispers, faint and cold. A search crew arrived days later, sent by a nearby neutral species, the Velari. What they found inside changed everything. There were no bodies, no damage, no signs of struggle, just scratched symbols on the walls, alien and human mixed together, repeating the same word over and over. "Listen." The Velari transmitted the footage to every major galactic alliance. The message was clear. The humans weren't just fighting. They were sending a warning. No one knew what to do. The humans had no leader visible, no demands made, no face to speak to. Just silence and destruction. Merrick stood on the edge of a cliff, overlooking a valley hidden under layers of storm clouds. This was Site Zero, the first place where humanity had tested its deep stealth technology, long before the world knew of alien life. He was alone now, but not really. He could hear them. Not voices. Memories. Training. Everything he'd sacrificed to become what he was. Raina's voice crackled in his calm. "We need you again." He said nothing, but turned toward the dark clouds. Above those clouds, the Exeranti were gathering what little forces they had left. Desperate. Panicked. On the Exeranti dreadnought, General Vorek stood before his officers. His face had changed. The pride was gone. Now, only fear lived there. "They are not fighting to win," he said. "They are fighting to end us. Quietly. Completely." He turned to the last remaining scout captain. "Send a ship to Earth. Not to fight. Not to spy. To beg." Merrick launched again. No orders. No mission plan. He had seen the scout ship the moment it entered orbit. He watched as it dropped toward Earth, unarmed, slow, showing every signal of peace. But Merrick wasn't sure humans could trust anything now. He descended too. The scout ship landed in a barren desert. Its door opened. A single Xeranti soldier stepped out. No armor, no weapons, just trembling hands and wide eyes. Then the wind shifted, and Merrick appeared. Not walking, just standing there, like he had been waiting for hours. The alien dropped to his knees. "We surrender," he said. "Please, stop." Merrick tilted his head. No expression, no emotion. Just one question. "Why did you come?" The alien's voice broke. "We thought you were weak." Merrick took one step closer. "We are," he said softly, "until you make us strong." Above them, hidden in the clouds, more humans watched through long-range drones. Raina crossed her arms. "They're starting to understand." Dr. Lorne stood beside her. "It took death and silence for them to hear us." Raina looked up at the stars. "They haven't heard the loud part yet. The truth beneath the silence." Far above Earth, a quiet debate was happening in orbit. Inside Orbital Station Genesis, the highest security facility humans ever built, top officials sat around a long black table. No press, no politics, only facts. The kind of facts that could break galaxies. General Atwood broke the silence first. "They've sent a scout to beg." Raina Hale, still dusty from the desert, nodded. Merrick met him. "And?" the general asked. He let him go. Gasps filled the room. Dr. Lorne simply smiled. "He's learning." In deep space, far from any star, a prison floated in the void. Hidden, old, forgotten, but not empty. Inside, the walls were covered in human writing. Names, coordinates, numbers, and one repeated phrase: "Never flinch." A creature inside this prison banged its head against the wall, again and again. Not from pain, not from madness, from remorse. It was human, barely. Skin marked with old burns, eyes cold and strange. This man was once called Cassian Vale, the first test subject before Merrick, the one who failed. Or so everyone thought. Now he was awake. Merrick stood in the forest at night, watching a fire burn low. Beside him, a child no older than 10 stared at him without blinking. "Are you a monster?" the child asked. Merrick thought for a long moment. "I was made to be one." "Then why are you here?" "To make sure real monsters don't come back." Meanwhile, the Villari species, known for peace and memory, had discovered something strange. A hidden archive, sealed long ago by their ancestors. Inside were old files, recordings, warnings, all of them about Earth. But Earth had never left the planet back then. How did the Villari know about humans before first contact? One word kept appearing in the files: Project Bellshade. Back in Genesis Station, Raina reviewed those same files. Her hands were shaking. These were buried, before humans even invented satellites. General Atwood leaned in. "Then it wasn't us." Dr. Lorne nodded slowly. "No, it was them. They came first." Raina whispered, "So humanity wasn't the first version." Lorne turned to her, his eyes sharp. "We were the reboot." Out in the desert, Merrick received a transmission directly to his neural link. No tech, no sound, just images. The prison. The name, Cashinville. The old lab buried beneath the Earth's surface. Merrick's voice was cold. "He's still alive." Deep beneath the surface of an abandoned Earth facility, automated systems woke up. Dust fell. Lights flickered. Doors unlocked for the first time in 42 years. Inside those rooms were blueprints, photos, and a message scratched into the wall in blood. Never let him out. But the locks were broken now. Cashinvale was coming, not as a weapon, but as the reason the galaxy feared humans in the first place. In the skies, the Exeranti received a strange signal. Not from humans, from something older. A deep voice, half human, half machine. I am the first echo. I am what they buried. I am what they fear. And then, static. The Galactic Council panicked. Villari archives revealed more. Humans were created, not born. Part of an experiment that failed a long time ago. The original versions, hidden, destroyed, or exiled. But someone survived. And that someone was returning. Merrick loaded his gear. Reyna stood beside him. You really think it's him? Merrick nodded once. If it is, we end this. Reyna placed a hand on his shoulder. He was your brother once. Merrick's voice didn't shake. That's what makes it worse. The first echo awakens. Beneath the earth, in the hidden ruins of Facility Zero, the lights flickered on for the first time in decades. A cold metal door hissed open, releasing a breath of old air. Inside stood a man, tall, motionless, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Cassian Vale. Not fully human anymore. Not machine either. Something in between. His voice echoed through the silent halls. They built me to protect humanity. Then they buried me to save it. He stepped into the light. I remember everything. Above the ruins, Merrick stood with Reyna, looking down at the cracked surface. This place was wiped off every map, Reyna whispered. Because it wasn't meant to be remembered, Merrick replied. The wind howled as if warning them to turn back. They didn't. At the Galactic Council, the Villari elders argued. He's awake. The Echo Protocol has failed. Then activate the Bellshade countermeasure. But that would wipe Earth. Silence. Then pray the humans handle it first. Cassian walked through the destroyed labs, passing rows of stasis pods. All shattered. All empty. Each pod had a name. Most were marked, D. Kilka, but one caught his eye. Merrick Vale. He stared at it. You weren't supposed to wake up. Not yet. Reyna and Merrick reached the inner chamber. Inside, glowing symbols covered the walls. Symbols not human, not alien. Older. What is this? Reyna asked. Instructions, Merrick replied, for a weapon that could never be stopped. A deep voice echoed behind them. But it can be understood. They turned. Cassian stood there, unarmed, unmoving. I'm not your enemy, he said. Merrick didn't lower his gun. Then why were you locked away? Cassian's smile was tired. Because I didn't follow orders. In space, a fleet approached Earth. But it wasn't alien. It was automated. An ancient defense protocol. A last resort. The ships broadcast one repeating message. Terminate Echo. Secure Earth. No survivors allowed. Cassian looked up as the alert buzzed through his implant. They're coming. To finish what they started. Reyna stepped forward. Then help us stop them. Cassian looked at Merrick. Do you trust me? Merrick stared into his eyes. I trust that you hate being controlled. Cassian smiled. Good. Then we might survive. As they exited the ruins, the skies were already burning. Lasers split the clouds. Cities turned dark. But something strange happened. The human networks came online, faster than anyone expected. Old satellites woke up. Hidden bases activated, and a voice echoed through every human device. Echo online. All assets initiate redemption protocol. In the shadows of Earth, hidden soldiers walked again. They wore no flag. Only a mark on their chest. A broken circle. The Forgotten Army. The remnants of Project Bellshade. And they were ready for war. Back at Genesis Station, Dr. Lorne stared at the screen. Cassian triggered the redemption code. General Atwood's face went pale. That hasn't been touched in 60 years. Lorne whispered, because we hoped it never would. Cashin looked at Merrick. You were the final version. Cleaned up. Safer. Merrick asked, what does that make you? Cashin's answer was cold. The unfinished truth. Redemption protocol. The skies above Earth were torn apart. Automated warships, black, cold, heartless, rained down fire across the continents. But Earth wasn't alone anymore. Not this time. From deep underground bunkers, forgotten human squadrons emerged. Not armies of the present, but warriors of the past, from long-hidden projects, experiments, and secret programs. They wore no uniforms, only scars, and they followed a single command. Redemption protocol. Protect humanity at all costs. Merrick stood with Cashin atop the ruined tower near the old city. They could see the smoke rising far beyond the hills. Reyna tapped her comm. All remaining cities are dark. Shields are collapsing. Cashin didn't flinch. Let them fall. Reyna frowned. What? He turned to her. Because the real fight begins when there's nothing left to lose. Up in orbit, the enemy AI ship recognized resistance. It scanned Merrick's DNA. Match found. Codename ECHO09. Status: live. Threat level: maximum. The ship began to reprogram its fleet. New target: terminate all ECHO-class entities. Cashin smiled when the alert came in. They're scared of us. In the center of Earth's final command node, Merrick activated the Echo Core. The ground shook. Wires surged with blue light. A holographic map lit up, showing every dormant Echo unit hidden in the crust of the planet. Thousands of small, silent metal guardians, all awaiting one word. Merrick spoke it softly. Awaken. And they did. The battlefield changed. Massive war machines, built by ancient humans for a war that never came, rose from mountains, oceans, and deserts. Alien AIs tried to adapt. They couldn't. Because these machines didn't follow logic. They followed human instinct. Cashin led the charge on the ground. He was faster, stronger, and angrier than anyone had seen. He moved through metal and fire like a ghost of vengeance. Behind him, Merrick coordinated the forces. Reyna flew overhead, guiding airstrikes and rescue operations. For the first time in a century, humanity fought as one. The Galactic Council watched in silence. The Velari Prime shook its head. We called them primitive. They're not. Another whispered. There's something else. The old High Speaker stared into the stars. They're what happens when evolution refuses to kneel. As the largest AI command ship prepared to self-destruct, Merrick saw his chance. He and Cashin took a shuttle and flew directly into its core. Are you ready? Merrick asked. Cashin looked at him. I've been ready for 60 years. They landed in the heart of the ship. Cashin ripped open the central node. Inside pulsed a strange cube, pure alien code. You destroy it, Cashin said. Merrick frowned. Why me? Cashin's eyes turned dim. Because I was the weapon. You were the reason. Cashin stayed behind. Merrick ran. And as the explosion engulfed the ship, Cashin whispered, for humanity. The skies cleared. The alien fleet fell apart like shattered glass. On Earth, silence returned. But it wasn't defeat. It was survival. Days later, Merrick stood on a ridge, watching the sunrise. Reyna walked up beside him. He saved us, she said. He gave us a future. Merrick nodded. But we still carry the past. She smiled. Then let's carry it well. In the deep quiet of space, a beacon blinked. Old. Unknown. A signal. Message. Humanity survived. And we remember.